Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Network. I'm Lindsay, and today I have Sev Russo with us. Thank you for joining us, Sev.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay.
Of course. So, Sev is a real estate attorney with DNR Law. Prior to DNR Law, it was DiPaolo and Russo.
That's true.
And we met each other through Berkshire Hathaway. I was an agent there, and he was working with them as well. And DiPaolo and Russo and DNR Law have been an absolute foundation for the success of my real estate career, and it's an honor to have him on here. So let's go ahead and start talking about the history of DiPaolo and Russo.
Yeah, so it started 40 years ago-ish, and my dad and my uncle started this business out of law school when they didn't have anything. And they built this business. They did business for different banks when banks were the driver of the title business. Ended up with Berkshire Hathaway being in-house title for half of Berkshire Hathaway's offices. That's how I was fortunate enough to meet you. And at that time, they were doing the South Hills offices and the East offices of Berkshire Hathaway. And Berkshire Hathaway had their own title company at that time as well. So they ended up doing that forever. And I kind of grew up in this business from the beginning. When I was a kid, I would go to the office. My dad would bring me to the office. I would file papers. I did every job from going to the recorder's office and recording deeds to, really cool. Doing coordinating, and ended up going to law school. And here I am doing it now. So it's very exciting.
That's really neat. Yeah. And then I feel in real estate too. I mean, here, I have my kids out front right now. So
of course,
but it's like, we're always, and I think that's great though. Like, just obviously you growing up, it really made you enjoy it and love it, I'm sure. Like being a part of it.
Yeah. I mean, you just don't really know. I didn't really know much else as far as, my dad was every day he would come home, he'd be on the phone, in the car talking to somebody, I was like, what the heck's he doing? And now I'm doing the same thing. I'll be driving home from work and you'll call and say, hey, I have a question. And before I get out and get attacked by my kids, I want to finish my thought or finish the conversation that I'm having. When the kids go to bed, we return phone calls or return any calls that we had, that hadn't been taken care of for the day. So, I watched it growing up, and now it's kind of funny to see it full circle. I'm doing it myself now.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. So for agents, which I know even in transactions, like I have my moments, like even Vanessa's to like, hey, Linz, need your commission statement, statement.
Yeah.
But for agents, when they're working with title, what are some of the biggest tips of advice to make their sale as smooth as possible? Like, what do you need from them?
Yeah. I mean, I think that like agents are, most of the time your job is done by selling the property. That's the most difficult task that you guys have. But from a closing perspective, if you're on the listing side of a transaction, 99% of the time, unless it's in the city of Pittsburgh, that transaction is probably going to need a die test. That transaction might need an occupancy inspection. Mm-hmm. Knowing that up front helps us on the back end because we're going to ask you for it anyway.
Yeah, and you're going to find out.
And we're going to call you and say, hey, this die test needs to be done. You guys, as a listing agent, would have access to the sellers and to the access to the property. Mm-hmm. If you know that it needs to be done, the quicker you get that done, and some agents will call and say, oh, well, we need to close in 30 days. Yeah. How can we close quickly? Yeah, of course we can. I'll close as quickly as we can. But a lot of that is predicated on die test being done, occupancy being done, so that the municipality can then release lien letters and tax certifications to us, which allows us to clear the title. So it's kind of like we all, and you know this very well, we all work together to make the process happen. Yeah. Communication is huge. Yeah. That's why everybody calls, my office or calls me and says, hey, can we close in this amount of days? What are the requirements needed to close in this municipality? Once you know that, then it's kind of like, okay, that's on you guys. Just to, we'll a lot of the time send the paperwork in, the forms, the check for the die test or for the occupancy. But ultimately, access to the property is on the realtor because we don't have access. We can't let an inspector into the property or let a plumber in to do a die test. So, kind of like if the more proactive, the better, as far as getting to the closing table quickly.
Right. And I would have to say your company does a great job at accommodating the agents, because
We try our best.
there's been many times where I'm like, oh crap, like, I forgot to do this, or like, hey, can we move this way? I'm juggling this end on this, for the closing day, whatever, have not. And you guys always pull it together.
We are in the accommodation
Yeah.
business. That is the business that I'm in. So whatever you guys want, I do my very best to accommodate it. Sometimes it's not possible, but most of the time,
Yeah, if it's possible,
whatever
you make
guys
it
want.
happen.
We want to do that. That's what can separate us from a competitor company.
I 100% agree. So let's talk about DiPaolo and Russo, how it transitioned to DNR law. Because I know even when I say to my clients, they may have used you in the past, I'm like, this is DiPaolo and Russo still, it's DNR law. So you just rebranded it. But if you want to share, any insight to that, so agents that may think DiPaolo and Russo right now with the rebranding of DNR law.
DiPaolo and Russo was the company that was the law firm. DNR Law is now the law firm. But most of our business is done out of the settlement company, Universal Settlement. That's probably more known than DiPaolo and Russo, I would imagine, or DNR Law. Yeah. Universal Settlement is the title company. So essentially what we did was just rebranded it only because transition, but liability, because my dad and my uncle were doing closings when I was in diapers. So, if they did a closing in 1985 and, someone called me and said, oh, you did this closing in 1985. Well, I don't know anything about that. I was just born. So I don't want to be responsible for something that happened back then. So I changed the company name to be something that was more still recognizable, still consistent because of the legacy and because of the success that they've had. I didn't want to upset it too much, but at the same time, I didn't want to have that liability moving forward. So I just changed the name. But same thing, same people, same everything. They're still there. They're still doing their thing. So.
Which your dad is great too.
He's great. He's the best. Yeah, I've learned everything from him. He's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never forget the one time.
I still bust his chops. Yeah.
I'll never forget one time he sent me a text message where he was kind of like taking a survey of agents. I can't even remember exactly what it was. And he said, hi, this is Sev. And then I was like so baffled. I kept looking at my phone and I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, and I would look at your phone number. I'm like, but I have his number saved. And then I sent screenshots and I said, what's going on? I said, I have you over here. And he goes, oh, I don't even want to know what you two are up to. This is Sev Senior.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. He was always,
he's great.
It was always something because his phone number was the same with two different numbers. Yeah. His email was the same with two different numbers, or with two letters different. It's been working together, having the same name. It's been interesting, but also it's been helpful as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, we got into DNR, how it started and everything. Now, one of the strongest attributes with you, for me personally, is the strong relationships you have with the agents. And I feel like that's really important, other than the accommodations, which we already touched based on. But no matter what I've been going through in life, I can call and like pick your brain, right? And absolutely. I feel like not too many attorneys out there are closing title companies to have that relationship. And I'll never forget one time you're like, I don't have business cards. I am the business card.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
And that's so true, because you're a great friend.
Thank you.
And I think, thank you. And I think that's something, for agents that are considering, who should I have as my back pocket as a go-to title company, to know that you also are there for them on other levels is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the main differences from when we were doing work for Berkshire Hathaway into today, it was a great opportunity to meet people. Obviously, that's how I met you, through that. But when you're in-house with a company, you almost feel obligated to use that company because they're pushing you to a particular service vendor or whatever. Whereas now, because we're not affiliated with any company, we're able to work with people who want to work with us, who we choose to work with, who, so it ends up being that more friend relationship as opposed to a forced relationship where you get to meet, I know about your kids. I know about obviously Patrick. We've talked to, Patrick and I have talked a million times about different things and how he needed help with stuff or whatever, and obviously happy to do that. So it allows you to have more of a friendship with the people that you work with, which then in turn, it creates that mutual benefit relationship where, I can help you with certain things that other companies can't.
Right.
I help you with your work, and I'm very fortunate to do that with agents, but we are in the relationship business. So
Yep.
it's all about,
All relationships.
relationships. And we're very fortunate because we work with professional realtors. Usually a realtor doesn't end up with a title company, a lawyer, title company, unless their business is successful and they think that we can provide some sort of benefit to them, a different level of service, a different level of accountability for them. So, when you have a client who you're writing up an offer for at 9:00 at night and you say, oh my gosh, I don't know about this, we'll call Sev. Okay, well, when I answer the phone at 9:00 at night and you're with your client, that makes you look good, right? That makes you, as a realtor, it's a value add to your business that you have someone that you can call who is responsive and willing and able to help. And I think that that's in a business where we all offer the same title insurance, we all offer the same thing for the same cost. The title insurance is state regulated, so in that world, you have to offer something unique and different to set yourself apart, and that's where I think that we do that.
No, you definitely do. I remember I had a listing appointment. It was last year, I believe. But where it was the one with a lot of acreage, and the mother wasn't capable of signing, but they just didn't have things recorded. There was someone, West Virginia and things like that. During the listing point, I was able to call you and ask those questions.
Yeah.
And that came off really well. And it also set the tone for the wholesale.
Sure. And then when at the end, when you talk to those people at the beginning of the process, and then you end up meeting them at the end of the process, at a closing, or, because I'm the one who talks to them at the beginning,
Right.
My office, they do a great job of handling everything in the middle of the process. And then I show up at the closing at the end. This just happened last night. The guy said, oh my gosh, I've talked to you 3 or 4 times. It's great to finally meet you. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, it kind of brings it all full circle, makes that client feel comfortable, familiar face, familiar voice, in the process. So yeah, that's part of what we do.
I guess you can say, I was kind of raised in the real estate. Parents are immigrants. My entire family is, immigrants. They came over here from Syria. My grandfather and my great uncles, something drew them to real estate. I don't know what it was. They started buying property, and then it just kind of passed down generation to generation. Aunts, uncles, my family migrated here. They started in Oakland, and then the next thing you know, they start buying property.
Wow.
And it just kind of blew up from there. So as a young kid, I was born in Oakland. I remember you can walk within 3 minutes any direction, you're going to be at someone's house, a relative.
That's pretty neat.
It was pretty neat. It still was like that. And I would say, honestly, between my aunts and uncles and cousins and relatives, they probably own 300 units in Oakland.
Let's start talking about advice you can give the general public. We've touched base on, agents and the relationships and the things of that nature. However, what are tips and guidance you can give for people who are about to inherit a property? Tips and legal advice for real estate inheritance and anything along those lines you want to share.
Yeah, sure. When I was just had gotten out of law school in 2011, I didn't really know anybody. I didn't have my own business connections. So I ended up going and teaching myself how to do estate work, because that was something that we didn't do at the office. My dad or my uncle, they didn't do that. Not very much of it, at least. And so it was like a way that I could make extra money, separate from doing what everybody else was doing. It was something I could add to the business. So I ended up getting into like the estate process and trying to figure all that out. The biggest thing about the estate process is there's 99% of the time you need to be sworn in as an executor. If there's a will, you need to probate the will. If there's no will, then you have to find the heirs and figure out who's going to act as the administrator of the estate. Once that happens, once you're sworn in at the courthouse, that is the kind of trigger that allows that person to sign a deed on behalf of the estate, or sign a listing contract, or sign a sales agreement on behalf of the estate. So that's like the first thing. So everyone asks me, well, like, at what point can they sell a property if the person is dead? If the owner of the property is deceased, and at what point can someone actually sell? Well, that's actually when they can do it, is once someone's sworn in at the courthouse. Different processes for that, but yeah, that's when it can actually happen. And then from there, there's 7 procedural steps for an estate that we have to go through to get it done, which is kind of outside of the real estate process. And then at the end of at a closing, there's an inheritance tax hold, because inheritance tax is lienable against property. So we have to hold a certain percentage of the estate, of the sale of the property, to guarantee that inheritance tax gets paid. And once that gets paid, or once there's an appraisement that comes back from the Department of Revenue of Pennsylvania, then they get that money back. So that is that's kind of the process for inheritance taxes. Now there's another situation that if the person died over a year and a day ago, so if I died, January 1st of 2022, on January 2nd of 2023. If I didn't have a will and I didn't have anything else to probate, then the heirs of that estate can sign a deed transferring that property from all of the living heirs to the new owner, which would then preclude them from having to go to probate and go through that whole process. So there's a year and a day provision that if that person died a year and a day ago, then they can sell the property without having to go through probate and without having to go do that. Now, there's a lot of other things with that, as far as what else they had in their possessions and accounts and different things, of whether they would actually have to go through probate. But to sell the property itself, they wouldn't have to go to probate to sell if the person who owns the house died over a year and a day ago.
Understood. Thank you very much for sharing that. So one of the questions I get asked a lot about by my clients, and I'm sure agents reach out to you, or just clients that have worked with you personally, but when their property gets assessed, on how to handle that.
Yeah, and
any tips of advice?
Yeah, it's different based on the county. Right. Every county is different in that regard. But in Allegheny County, they don't know what they're doing in Allegheny County anyway. But it always is changing. Yeah. 3 or 4 years ago, they had a common level ratio of 1.23, which essentially meant that you were taxed at 77% of fair market value. So when you sell a house and that property, you record a deed that sets a new fair market value, they would take 77% of that value, multiply it by the millages in each school district, the county, and the municipality, and that's how you would pay your taxes. Now that number is 1.83, 1.84. It's way higher. So essentially your assessed value is going to be about 60% of your fair market value now, which is the new law that was just passed, or the new court case that was just decided, which when people then set their record a deed, then they're dividing or multiplying by 60%, which is, it really screws everybody up, because the millages in each municipality and school district were based off of the old numbers. So it's going to take the school districts, the municipalities, the county, years to be able to catch up to meet the new common level ratio. So when you when you buy a house now and they take 60% of the fair market value, that's what your assessed value should be based on. But they're always trying to assess, they're always trying to get more tax revenue. So it's kind of one of those situations where you have to, it's a living, breathing situation that could change tomorrow. They're struggling to find some consistency based on the court decision that was just levied.
And then what do you give? So if a client decided they wanted to appeal, or is that the right word I'm looking for? How do they go about that, or any tips?
But most of the time, when you're talking about a recent sale, you kind of are in trouble, because you have a sales agreement, you have a sales agreement, a deed, and a settlement statement that shows the fair market value of the property. And so when you go in and you say, when they're basing it off of fair market value, they're basing assessment off of fair market value. So they multiply that purchase price by the common level ratio and come out with a number. If you were to say, well, my property is not worth that, we overpaid because the market was hot, whatever it is, they're going to look at you and say fair market value is determined by a recent purchase price, by a recent sale. And so if it was years ago and you think that your taxes need to be adjusted, or if it's a commercial property based on where you think that the value of your property is based on revenue and not based on like physical real estate structure, and your revenue was declining, you can appeal based on that. But if you have a recent sale and you have a mortgage and they know you have an appraisal because you have a mortgage, you're in trouble, because I mean, the best case scenario is you would take that purchase price times the common level ratio in whatever county you're in, and that would be what you want the assessed value to be. You don't want it to be over that, and they usually don't ask for it to be over that. But the most educated you can be is to go in there and say, here's my purchase price, here's the common level ratio, here's what I want the assessed value to be, and that's usually a winner for them. For the client, really, that's a winner without having to spend a whole bunch of money on. Now, there are other factors, and other law firms would say, we might be able to get it down a little bit, but when you're talking about, a couple $1,000s on assessment, you're talking about a couple dollars on taxes, and then you're going to pay a lawyer to do different things. So, it depends on the situation. Yeah. When you have a recent sale, it's really hard to fight an assessment because they know fair market value is established by the deed.
Any other additional advice you want to give as far as maybe something that pops up a lot for you personally, that when you're helping maybe just your direct clients or, just our sales in general? Is there anything that's like the most consistent that you deal with?
No, I mean, I think that pretty much all the agents are really great that we work with. I mean, we've been very fortunate with the realtors that work with us. Like I said, a lot of you guys are friends, and we talk about normal daily stuff, and the transactions are all unique. I mean, every deal has its own personality, has its own little thing that pops up. I mean, we just had a transaction yesterday where seller is an estate. They're fighting over. The children are fighting over all the money. We had to get a court order from the court to sell the property. There's a prior owner mortgage that needed to be investigated with Citizens Bank. So there's complicated situations like that. There's divorced couples that have to be dealt with a certain way when they don't want to be in the same room as each other. Yeah, all different situations. But just when you think that you've seen it all, something else pops up, and I've been doing this for 12 years. I think I've seen it all. I haven't. Everything. Once a week, something pops up where I think to myself, I can't believe this is happening. I just can't. But that's why we have value, right? We are able to solve that problem. Whatever the problem is, we solve it. It's not, there's nothing too complex. We have all the people in place, whether it's, the people that work with us or the title company attorneys who, we lean on sometimes for more complicated things. We have all the people in place to handle all those situations, and we'll obviously know which questions to ask if we're not 100% on something. Yeah, and you do a great job at that. Yeah, so that's the goal, though, is just to make it. The closing this morning with that estate that I told the buyer at the closing. I said, you should have seen what happened here, and they said we didn't know any of that. And I said, well, I didn't tell you because it wasn't helpful to get your buyer all fired up over something that they couldn't control. Right. It was in my, I was controlling it. I was the one who was dealing with it. We dealt with it and we closed on time, no delays. It was way more complex than that, but it was something that you make it seamless. But it's something that if you start screaming fire in the crowded theater, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, well, how are you going to handle that?" Well, it's not for you to handle. Like if it can be handled, we'll take care of it. If there's something that needs to be done, fix it. Yeah, that's it. For this market right now, any advice you can give to agents? I know we always collaborate together, right? But I'm sure maybe in your passing conversations over the past few months, just advice for agents that maybe you heard a few things that are working, for other agents, to bring in the sales. Yeah, I mean, I think everything in this market is back to basics, right? When in 2021 we were all so busy that we were trying to just close deals, right? We were trying to get them in, close them, and finish each transaction because we were all overwhelmed with what was happening. But now it's kind of back to that, you have to have the personal relationship. You have to, you have to go to your grassroots. You have to talk to people. It's putting a deal together that makes sense as opposed to, it's being creative for you guys being creative, and it makes the agents stand out as, each agent has their own technique of how to make a deal, put one together. I know you pride yourself on that, putting a deal together, and all good agents do that. They have their own way of making their deal more attractive, their offer more attractive to somebody. But it's really back to that personal touch, right? There's nothing beats person-to-person communication. Nothing beats just going back to how everyone was successful prior to 2021.
Right.
We all are in that same boat where, we don't have a magic pill. It's all
Right.
person-to-person contact. It's all relationship-based. It's all of that.
Putting in the work.
Yeah, putting it
Yeah.
working. Yeah, it's all
Yep.
it's all about that. And that's really what it is right now. But I mean, I was just at a continuing legal education on Thursday. The title company's 35% down. So everybody, the overall, the Fidelity, the First American, their numbers are down just like everybody else. So it's not, it's not like every
Right.
realtors, if you guys aren't selling, we're not doing business.
Right.
If we're not doing business, the title company is not making money.
Yeah, we're all connected.
We're all connected. And so, but those numbers are also based off of probably an inflated 2021 number where everybody's numbers were so much higher than what should have been, because the market was just dictating that they were higher. So I don't think it's as bad as people think it is, but it won't last forever. Real estate is cyclical; it goes up and down. Just hang in there, and professionals will prevail, right?
Yep, absolutely. And I've said this a few times recently, but it's just these times kind of weed out, the strongest ones, and the people that want to keep pushing through these times.
Sure.
I
mean, everybody, like, real estate was sexy. It was something that everybody.
It was easy a few years ago.
Everybody thought that real
Stuff was
estate was
falling.
like, oh, well, my aunt's selling a property, so I'm gonna get into being a realtor. It's an easy $5,000 I can make. It's real estate was the market to be in. It was the booming business a couple years ago. When that doesn't happen and you don't have an established client list, you don't have a referral base. I mean, you guys work on referral, we work on referral, we all work on referral. I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time for an agent to get that, to be successful, and a lot of hard work and a lot of, a lot of non-paid hours that happen for all of us to get to where you eventually want to be.
And that kind of pivots into what I was going to go into next was for new agents, like advice, you can give them. And I think you said it right there, is just putting in the time, and it's not going to happen, in a month or 2 months, 3 months.
It didn't happen for any of us quickly.
It takes years,
Right.
I mean, you start seeing the work that you put in, you'll put in a few months of work, and then, here comes a sale. Here comes the
Right.
other one, but it's consistently building on that, consistently improving. Even when you feel like this didn't work out, you just apply the lesson and you keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to be a chameleon, right? Like, so one minute you're doing a $15,000 property that someone's buying a vacant piece of property that they're going to maybe build on, or they're going to, maybe they just are buying a lot next to their house, or we're transferring a property from mom and dad to their kids, and then the next minute we're doing a $1.5 million closing where the guy or woman, they're, professionals, and they're, it's all of that. It's that ability to mold yourself from one situation to another. It's not thinking that you're too good to handle any particular situation. They all are equally important. Every deal is equally important. Whether it's that $15,000 deal or the $1.5 million deal, you have to treat them all the same, because, and you guys know this, realtors know, that person who bought the $15,000 property in 2008 maybe finds something in 2009, gets a great job in 2012, and buys $1.5 million property in 2020, and they call you back, and now you've secured an awesome client because you took care of that person when they didn't have all the stuff that, whatever. So I think it's one of those situations where, staying in connection, you never know who's going to be the person who's going to bring your next transaction.
It's very true.
Hard work. Yep.
So I think it's really important for agents, to realize where their career can go with having the right relationships with the team that you build for yourself personally, right? So for me, when I decided to work with you, it opened up a lot of doors for me. My clients getting great service, you being able to answer questions, on the dot for me, and just anything I really needed, in life to pick your brain about.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that you truly bring to the table. And for agents, if they're looking for that person to help uplift their career, that they really should. I personally feel you should really reach out to Sev, but it's also,
Thanks.
but it's
Shameless plug.
but it's so important, no matter who you're close with, and getting those relationships, because it elevates your career in this industry. It really does.
And it works with a lender. It works with a title company.
Yes.
It works with a realtor. It works with a home inspector. It works with everybody.
It's finding who you work best with.
In your deals, let's say you're working with a lender. We know the lender, and they have an issue. They need a waived fee. They need something to get the person qualified. Well, if you're working with Wells Fargo, right, and they're in California,
it's hard to have that type of relationship.
They can't call me, but if it's someone who's familiar with our situation, they'll call my cell phone and say, "Hey, Sev, I need this. I need you to." Conway. He'll call and he'll say, "Hey, I need you to do this. Like I need, this is how we can get this person in this house." Okay, fine. Ask. No, fine, no problem at all. Yeah. Happy to do that, of course. Same with your lender. If you give two lender choices, one of them has a better rate, you're doing your client a service by giving them two great options, two local options of people who here, can help. And it's kind of just, it's very important for the agent to be able to call us and say, "Hey, what do you need?" It's very important for us to be able to contact the agent and say, "Hey, we need this." It's not like we're calling some random person and we don't know and saying, if I need your commission statement, I'm gonna call you and be like, "Lance, like, what are you asleep over there? Let's go, come on, send it." Not that you ever do that, but same thing.
I've had my times.
A couple times, yeah. But
Vanessa's always accommodating. Sometimes I'll just do the quick email. I'm like, "Hey, it's this much." You're like,
but that's what I mean.
Like,
it's
what I mean? You guys
but it's that communication that's open. It's an open
open
communication.
Yep.
And with the lender, same thing. The lenders have to be. The local lenders are so much better. All local lenders are so much better than national lenders. Local lenders, when we work with a million different local lenders, and they are all far more qualified in this area, far more successful in this area, make our lives easier because they know PA, whereas Wells Fargo or Bank of America or Chase or whoever, these big banks that people get caught up with. Yeah, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, too many names on it.
Sense.
You don't have a point of contact. Which ends up doing the client a disservice in the end, because they'll have the transfer taxes wrong on the closing disclosure. They'll have and we have to go back and correct them. It delays the process. They disclose the wrong numbers. It's terrible. Whereas local lenders, number one, you're supporting local people, which is awesome. You're supporting people that and helping their families out by doing the same process, the same job, paying the same fees most of the time that you're going to pay to any of the other people. So I'd rather support local people than people who don't know this market.
I agree. And one of my agents actually has a sale right now, and her clients did not want to e-sign anything. And a lot of lenders now, a lot of documentation is e-sign. And her clients were older, and they wanted to sign in person, and they went to Conway's office and they signed yesterday all the papers. And they loved being in person. They loved, the service he gave. And I think it's important to remember that, to have that option as agents, because you're not going to have clients, all your clientele is going to be okay with e-signing. You're going to have clientele that they do want to be in person. They do want to go over the paperwork, in that sense. And, there's all types of people. And I think having those options for the local lenders or, local businesses, even for you to sit down and answer questions with them, that's extremely crucial to have that service for our clientele to enable a lot of growth.
Absolutely, but we all love love hybrid packages. The lenders that do the hybrid packages, they're very nice. Yeah, like just as a side. No, you're right though. That each person does it differently. Each buyer is different. Each like we talked about, each situation's unique, and you kind of have to deal with each individual situation of how they want to handle it. You know, some people want you to go to them, some people want to come to you. You know, some people have to sign separate. Some, you know, we do it all. You know, some people want to e-sign as much as they can.
Right.
Some people don't. And so I'm here for all of it. Whatever they want to do, I'm going to accommodate it. And, you know, we have 6 attorneys on our staff that go out and will meet you and do this stuff. And, however you want it done is how we'll handle it. So yeah, that's the situation.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sev. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thanks.